Welcome back. This is part 32E. I'm Sarah Wilder. This is Surviving the Man I Married. We left off in part 32D talking about the three things that defined Jim. Number one was his image as a good Mormon. Number two, as a faithful married family man. Number three, as a cop. So all three of these things were not authentic. They were definitely fabrications, artificial impersonations, if you will, like we talked about in the other episode, how malignant narcissists like to have facades. Now we're going to move on. In this section 32E, we're going to talk about commonalities, things that malignant narcissists and psychopaths have in common. The first one being omnipotence. Omnipotence is their belief in their own absolute authority on what's best for themselves and those around them. The second thing is relentless myopathy. This is their ability to ruthlessly, singularly pursue goals and overcome obstacles, not letting anything dissuade them from success on their mission. Very focused, focused, focused. Number three is narcissistic injury. Narcissistic injury is when they detect a threat to their own power or status, both kinds of undesirables, the malignant narcissist and the psychopath. They experience what's called narcissistic injury, whereby retribution is sought against the offender. That's you and me, you and me, manifesting in physical violence and or emotional manipulation, emotional abuse, and violence. Um, for me, that didn't have a name until I started doing this research, but narcissistic injury is a very, very harmful thing. And I know this might be ringing some bells with many of you. Take note if you hear bells going off. Okay, so both types of abusers, the MN and the psychopath, won't hesitate to punish an offender for infractions to their codes. So remember, these kinds of people are highly egocentric. That's that internal framework, that ego-driven structure they have that guides and directs or dictates their behavior, their code of ethics, and how they do things. And they impose that on others from their internal egotistical self onto us, onto you, and place these expectations onto you, mostly without you knowing. So, and neither the MN or the psychopath will feel a second of remorse or guilt over the punitive actions they take against us, against their victims. However, one departure here. While the psychopath will seek a more direct path to their absolute dominance and victory, now think a fictional villain here. I offer up Batman's Ra's al Ghul. Uh, that differs from the malignant narcissist who would like to prolong achieving their end goal by applying extraordinary cruelty and seeking sadistic satisfaction from the violence they inflict. So here I'll insert the fictional villain, Batman's Scarecrow, brilliantly played by Cillian Murphy. That burlap sack he puts on his face, the way he torments those victims in the insane asylum. As you can see, these fictional villains have shared traits and aberrant behaviors from all the categories we've been talking about regarding malignant narcissism and even dissociative identity disorder too. But each one is very unique in several ways. All right, that concludes the malignant narcissism episodes and the three before it on DID. Right now, I'm going to sum up the whole series, 32A through E, by revisiting the three questions I posed at the beginning in part 32A. These were things I asked myself in the summer of 2022 when I embarked on writing this book, when I began this research. And the first one goes like this. Had Jim been spared extreme childhood harm, who would he have become? So I still think Jim would have played basketball in college and he would have stayed in college. After all, Idaho State University was in his hometown and he loved that school. He knew many people who went there. I think he would have gone there, and afterwards he would have taken a job working where he loves most, the outdoors, maybe as a park or a forest ranger, even maybe as a basketball coach and a high school history teacher. Those jobs track for that description. Question two, was the totally irresistible guy I first met an alternate persona, a total fabrication, a facade? Or was at least part of him, part of who I met that night and fell so hard and fast for the authentic Jim? Yeah, I do. I do believe I was shown a brief glimpse of the real Jim, his true self, his true heart. For me, it was a time when everything was going my way. Everything was going great. Men were not on my radar. And I said that repeatedly. I had just moved to Idaho. I told my aunt and uncle that because they kept trying to fix me up with people they knew. And it was a no, no, no. I also can't ignore what Peter, the psychic medium Peter from many of my previous videos here, he related to me from Spirit in our third reading together from March of 2019. He said from Spirit that Jim and I were meant to have a life together because for me it served a specific purpose, a spiritual purpose, that I would know dark from light and to use my knowledge and experiences living in and overcoming darkness for the good of others. And that's what I'm trying to do through writing my book and doing these videos, to be a warning, a warning, a warning, and a beacon. If you don't want your life to end up like mine, then please make changes. Please, please take action to help yourself and save yourself and your children if you have them at home. Question number 3. How would Jim's extreme mental illnesses and spiritual illnesses have manifested if he hadn't gone into law enforcement without access to the lethal knowledge, power, and autonomy he was afforded in that profession, and for over a quarter century, I might add? Uh, he'd still be a fake Mormon because of the high level of tribalism involved in membership and what a valuable, almost unbreakable facade that is. And it's a great cage to keep other people in too. I think he would have chosen a career where he still had a high level of autonomy and definitely some level of authority to have leverage over his victims and have control that he needs, that he desires, craves, and needs. So, fitting into that would be the teaching and the coaching job I mentioned earlier. And that gives him younger victims too, more easily manipulated. They're malleable people. He's disgusting. Okay. And as a private citizen, so besides his career as a private citizen, Jim had many, many weapons. I mentioned before, way over 110 knives. That is just what I knew about, what he had in his closet. Um, so I don't think that would change. That would stay the same. And he also had pew-pews as well. Uh, just a few that I knew of, and I'm sure there were more, in his secret storage unit that I found online in a secret background check. Okay. Anyway, and he's obsessed with survivalism. For those of you who don't know, someone asked me the other day what it was. It's living off grid, living in the wild, living off, roughing it, living in the, it's like a lifestyle of camping. So you should see my Kindle library. In 2022, February, when Jim had COVID, he filled it up with that crap. And he kept going in March and April, just the 2 months before he tried to unalive me with poison. So okay, so in that regards, a park ranger somewhere very remote would have fit Jim. Somewhere he could have maybe blossomed into a serial unaliver. That's possible, I do believe. Okay, enough with the shit talking. I'm going to read you now a chapter, just an excerpt from my book, because here's why. After I did the research and after I did the writing about the research, even like a year later, is when I actually got to this research in the book. It was very stressful. And this time for the videos is the third time I've revisited this research, and it's still a little triggering. I did meditating and prayer, and I came up with just a calming way to write the very end of the chapter that this information comes from. And so I'm just going to read it. While I'm not academically versed in psychology, the limited reading from reliable sources that I was able to do gave me invaluable perspective that, when added to what I've been taught by Spirit and what I live from being held tightly within Jim's orbit for 4 decades, it creates a pretty clear picture of who hijacked my heart, my soul, my life, and my children, why he did it, and how. This increased knowledge and supplemental perspective I carry in my left hand gives empirical weight to what my Christian mother heart has to say. And by that I mean how Jim was the very first victim when he was a very young child, deeply, deeply traumatized, extreme childhood harm. And that's where my mother heart towards Jim definitely comes into play. That reaction, it doesn't diminish my authentic experience and the logical expectations of the world and of my ego to grant me justice, which stings the palm of my right hand. But because better minds than mine are responsible for the outcome, I will accept whatever they and the universe have in store for him and for me. But it's doubtful anything but absolute transparency can subdue the relentless need for accountability and, to a degree, validation that tarnishes my joy. And in the words of my beloved Tyler Childers, I'm a hickory all the same. Okay, so I hope you'll be back for part 33 when I tell you about my end of living in safety and comfort and ease at Becca's house in Northern California. I'm Sarah Wilder. This is the 9 Lives of Sarah Wilder, surviving the man I married.